I divorced my wife after she got pregnant by another man. Now she wants me back. But what I did next left her speechless. So I'm 32 and I feel like my world is collapsing around me. Amy and I had been married for 5 years, the kind of marriage our friends envied. We met in college, fell in love quickly, and built what I thought was a solid life together. I worked as an architect at a growing firm while Amy taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school. We had a nice house in the suburbs, 2 cars, and plans to start a family. Everything seemed perfect. We'd been trying for a baby for almost a year with no luck. It was starting to wear on us, especially Amy, who'd always dreamed of being a mother. We had discussions about fertility treatments, though we hadn't taken that step yet. Then one day in March, Amy called me at work sounding excited but nervous. "I need to talk to you when you get home," she said. "It's important." I spent the rest of the day distracted, wondering what was up. Had she gotten that promotion she'd been hoping for? Had something happened with her parents? When I got home, I found her sitting at the kitchen table, her eyes red from crying but with a strange smile on her face. "I'm pregnant," she said. I was overjoyed, rushing to hug her, spinning her around the kitchen, laughing like a madman. All our trying had finally paid off. But when I set her down, I noticed she wasn't sharing my enthusiasm. Something was wrong. "There's something else you need to know," she said, not meeting my eyes. "The baby, it's not yours." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Not mine? How could it not be mine? We've been trying for a baby together for months. What do you mean it's not mine? Whose is it then? She started crying then, deep heaving sobs that shook her whole body. It was Jason, she finally admitted. My coworker. It was just one time, a stupid mistake. We were at a conference in Chicago 3 months ago and had too much to drink. It didn't mean anything, I swear. Jason, her fellow teacher, the guy who'd been to our house for dinner parties, who I'd played basketball with on weekends. That Jason. 3 months ago? I said, my mind spinning. You've known about this for 3 months and didn't tell me? I was going to, she said desperately. But then we kept trying for a baby, and I thought maybe it would be yours and none of this would matter. But when the doctor confirmed how far along I was, I couldn't lie to you anymore. I felt numb, disconnected from my body, like I was watching this scene from above. My wife was pregnant with another man's child. She'd been lying to me for months. We'd been intimate dozens of times since her affair, each time she knowing what she'd done while I remained oblivious. Does he know? I asked. She nodded miserably. I told him last week. He doesn't want anything to do with it. He's afraid his wife will find out. Of course he didn't. Good old Jason, willing to sleep with someone else's wife but not man enough to face the consequences. I need some air, I said, grabbing my keys. I couldn't be in that house another minute. I couldn't look at her tear-stained face or think about the life growing inside her, a permanent reminder of her betrayal. Please don't go, Amy begged. We can work through this. Couples survive affairs all the time. I made a terrible mistake, but I love you. We can raise this baby together. I stared at her, incredulous. She actually thought this was something we could just work through? That I would raise another man's child, born of my wife's infidelity? I need time to think, I said and walked out the door. I drove aimlessly for hours, ended up at a hotel near the office. I called in sick the next day and the day after. Amy kept calling, texting, leaving voicemails, alternating between apologies and pleas for understanding. I responded only to say I was safe and needed space. For a week I lived in that hotel room, barely eating, hardly sleeping, just trying to make sense of how my life had imploded so suddenly. I thought about our 5 years together, the plans we'd made, the future we'd envisioned, all built on what I now realized was a fragile foundation. I consulted a lawyer, got the divorce papers drawn up. Michigan is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery can impact property division and spousal support. Not that I cared about the money. I just wanted out. When I finally returned home, Amy had clearly been holding out hope that I'd forgive her. She'd cleaned the house, cooked my favorite meal, even bought tickets to a concert we'd talked about months ago. Her face crumpled when she saw my expression. I've filed for divorce, I said, setting the papers on the table. Amy's face went white. You can't be serious, she whispered. One mistake, and you're throwing away 5 years of marriage. One mistake. I laughed bitterly. Amy, you slept with a colleague, lied to me for months, and are now pregnant with his child. That's not one mistake. That's a series of deliberate choices you made. I know, she cried. I've been horrible, but please give me a chance to make it right. We can go to counseling. I'll do anything. It's too late, I said. I just don't see how we come back from this. I'll be staying with my brother until we sort out the house. You're really doing this, she said, her voice hardening. You're abandoning me when I'm pregnant? I'm not abandoning you, I said. I'm divorcing you. There's a difference. And don't try to make me the bad guy here. We agreed to a temporary arrangement where I'd pay the mortgage until the house sold. I moved in with my brother Mark across town and threw myself into work. The divorce proceeded quickly since we had no children together and agreed on most financial matters. Amy kept trying to delay, hoping I'd change my mind, but eventually realized I was serious. The divorce was finalized 3 months later, just as Amy was starting to show. I heard through mutual friends that Jason's wife had found out about the affair and kicked him out. Apparently he'd moved to Cleveland to start fresh. He never did step up to take responsibility for the baby. I bought a condo downtown, changed jobs, and began rebuilding my life piece by piece. Some days were harder than others. I'd catch myself thinking about calling Amy to share news or seeing something that reminded me of our life together. But mostly I felt relief that I'd gotten out before we had children of our own that would have tied us together forever. Or so I thought. A year passed. Divorce has a way of showing you who your real friends are. Some stuck with me, some sided with Amy, most just felt awkward and drifted away. I'd been on a few dates, nothing serious. Mostly I focused on my new job at a smaller, more innovative architecture firm where I was given creative freedom I'd never had before. I met Sarah at a charity event for the Children's Hospital. She was a pediatric nurse with an easy laugh and zero drama. We hit it off immediately, talking until the venue staff started stacking chairs around us. She was divorced too, although her story was less dramatic. Just two people who'd grown apart. We took things slow, both a bit gun-shy after our failed marriages. 6 months into our relationship, things were going great. Sarah was everything Amy wasn't, straightforward, honest, secure in herself. We never played games, never had those exhausting fights that go in circles. If something bothered her, she'd just say so, and we'd talk about it like adults. It was refreshing. I was falling in love again, something I hadn't thought possible in the aftermath of Amy's betrayal. Sarah and I were talking about moving in together, starting to plan a future. Then Amy called out of the blue. "Marcus," she said when I answered, sounding breathless. "I need to see you. It's important." I hadn't spoken to her in months. According to our divorce agreement, all communication was supposed to go through our lawyers. "Whatever it is, Amy, you can tell me over the phone." "Please," she said. "It's about Emma." Emma, her daughter. She'd been born about 6 months after our divorce was finalized. I'd never met her. Never even seen a picture. As far as I was concerned, she was the living proof of Amy's infidelity and Jason's cowardice. Not the child's fault, of course, but a reminder of everything I'd rather forget. "What about her?" I asked warily. "She's sick, Marcus. Really sick. I need to talk to you in person." Reluctantly, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop near my office. When I arrived, Amy was already there, bouncing a fussy baby on her knee. She looked different, thinner, with dark circles under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. Nothing like the polished, put-together woman I'd been married to. "Thanks for coming," she said as I sat down. "This is Emma." I looked at the baby, feeling an unexpected pang. She had a tuft of dark hair and big eyes that studied me curiously. She was cute, as most babies are, but I didn't see anything of Jason in her. Or Amy, for that matter. "You said she's sick," I said, trying to stay focused. Amy nodded, wiping at her eyes. "She has a rare blood disorder. She needs a bone marrow transplant. I'm not a match, and neither are my parents." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said genuinely. "That must be terrifying. But I don't understand why you're telling me this." "Jason should be a match," Amy said, "but he's disappeared. His parents won't help. They've wanted nothing to do with Emma since she was born." "Again, I'm sorry, but what does this have to do with me?" Amy took a deep breath, like she was preparing herself for something difficult. "I need you to get tested as a potential donor." I stared at her. Why would I be a match? She's not my child. Amy looked down at Emma, then back at me. "That's the thing, Marcus. She is." The coffee shop seemed to tilt around me. I gripped the table to steady myself. "That's not possible," I said. "You told me yourself she was Jason's." "I thought she was," Amy whispered. "I really did. But when she was born, there were some questions. The timing wasn't quite right. They did a paternity test, and Jason wasn't the father. It had to be you." My mind raced. If what she was saying was true, it meant Amy had been sleeping with both me and Jason around the same time. It meant the child I'd walked away from, my flesh and blood, was now desperately ill. "You've known this how long?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Since she was born," Amy admitted. "Almost 8 months." 8 months. 8 months during which I'd grieved my marriage, rebuilt my life, started a new relationship. 8 months she'd kept my daughter from me. "And you're only telling me now because you need something from me," I said, fury building. Not because it was the right thing to do, not because I had a right to know I have a child. I was afraid, she said, tears spilling down her cheeks. Afraid you wouldn't believe me, afraid you'd take her away from me. I know I don't deserve your help, but Emma does. She's innocent in all this. I stared at the baby, who was now gumming a teething ring, oblivious to the bombshell her mother had just dropped. My daughter. If Amy was telling the truth, I'll need proof, I said finally. A paternity test. And if she is mine, I want that legally established. I'll have rights. Anything, Amy said desperately. Just please get tested. The doctors say we don't have much time. I left the coffee shop in a daze. Called Sarah, canceled our dinner plans. I couldn't possibly explain this situation, not yet, not until I knew for sure. Went straight to my doctor and arranged for a paternity test. It would take a few days for results. Those were the longest days of my life. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on work. I kept thinking about that little girl with the dark hair and solemn eyes. Was she really mine? If so, what did that mean for my life, for my relationship with Sarah, for my future? The results came back positive. 99.9% probability that I was Emma's biological father. I sat on my couch staring at the paper until the words blurred, then called the hospital to arrange bone marrow testing. The next day I met with Amy and the doctor. They explained Emma's condition, took my blood for compatibility testing. The doctor was cautiously optimistic about finding a match, if not for me then from the donor registry. But a parent was always the best chance. As I was leaving the hospital, Amy tried to thank me. Don't, I said, holding up a hand to stop her. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it for Emma. If she's my daughter, I'll do whatever she needs. But this doesn't change what you did. You lied about her paternity, then kept her from me for 8 months, only telling me when you needed something. That's not okay, Amy. I know, she said, looking down. I've made so many mistakes. But maybe this is a chance to start over. The three of us. I'm with someone else now, I interrupted. Someone I care about deeply. Whatever fantasy you're building in your head about us being a family, stop it right now. If Emma is mine, I'll be in her life. I'll support her financially, emotionally. But you and I, we're done. I walked away, leaving her standing there. I had a lot to figure out. How to tell Sarah that I had a daughter. How to be a father to a sick child. How to co-parent with a woman I couldn't trust. But at least now I knew the truth. No more lies, no more secrets. 3 days later, the hospital called. I was a match for Emma. The bone marrow harvest was scheduled for the following week. The bone marrow procedure was more intense than I'd expected. They put me under general anesthesia, inserted large needles into my hip bones, and extracted the marrow. I woke up feeling like I'd been hit by a truck, sore and groggy, but knowing I'd done the right thing. My daughter had a fighting chance because of me. Sarah had been shocked when I told her about Emma, but surprisingly supportive. She's a pediatric nurse after all, committed to helping children. She understood this wasn't about Amy or our failed marriage, but about an innocent baby who needed help. Are you sure you want to keep seeing me? I asked her after explaining the situation. This is going to complicate things. I'll be co-parenting with my ex-wife for at least the next 18 years. Sarah just smiled. Marcus, I didn't fall for you because your life was simple. I fell for you because you're a good man who does the right thing even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. I don't deserve you, I said. Probably not, she teased. But you're stuck with me anyway. The transplant was successful. Emma responded well, though she'd need ongoing treatment and monitoring. I visited her in the hospital every day, watching her tiny body fight to heal. It was during those visits, sitting beside her crib, that I fell in love with my daughter. Despite everything, how she came to be, the months I didn't know she existed, Emma was part of me. I made her a silent promise that I would always be there for her, no matter what. Amy and I established an uneasy truce for Emma's sake. We worked with lawyers to formalize a custody arrangement, though it would be modified until Emma was fully recovered. I paid child support, backdated to her birth. Amy apologized repeatedly for keeping Emma from me. I acknowledged her apology but made it clear I wouldn't forget what she'd done. As Emma's health improved, she began showing more of her personality. She was stubborn, determined, with a belly laugh that could light up a room. Sarah came with me sometimes to visit, forming her own bond with Emma. Amy noticed, of course. At first, she was cold towards Sarah, clearly threatened by another woman in Emma's life. But Sarah's genuine care for Emma eventually won her over, at least enough for civil interaction. Then one evening, as I was getting ready to leave after a visit, Amy asked if we could talk. We sat at her kitchen table like we had the night she'd told me about her affair, the night that ended our marriage. It felt like a lifetime ago. I've been thinking about us, Amy said. About our family. We're not a family, I corrected gently. We're co-parents. There's a difference. But we could be, she insisted. These past weeks, seeing you with Emma, watching how good you were with her, it's reminded me of why I fell in love with you. I shifted uncomfortably. Amy, I'm with Sarah now. But you have a history with me, she argued. We built a life together once. We could do it again. For Emma's sake. Don't you want her to have both her parents together? It was the lowest blow, using our daughter as emotional leverage. The old Amy peeking through the contrite facade. Emma will have both her parents in her life, I said firmly. But not together. That ship has sailed, Amy. I've moved on. To her, she said scornfully. You hardly know her. I know her better after 6 months than I knew you after 5 years, I countered. She's never lied to me, never betrayed me, never used our child as a manipulation tactic. Amy's eyes filled with tears. I've changed, Marcus. The affair, Emma's illness, everything has changed me. I know I hurt you, but I still love you. I've always loved you. I stood up, gathering my things. I'm not having this conversation, Amy. I'll see you Friday when I pick up Emma. Just think about it, she pleaded. We could be a real family. I drove home troubled by the interaction. I should have known Amy wouldn't give up so easily. She'd never accepted responsibility for her actions, always finding ways to justify or minimize them. Now she was using Emma in an attempt to win me back. I needed to shut this down clearly and definitively before it got out of hand. The opportunity came sooner than expected. The next day, Amy called saying Emma was running a fever and asked if I could come over. I rushed to her house, worried about my daughter's health after her transplant. Sarah offered to come too, given her medical background, but I told her to stay home, not wanting to create tension. When I arrived, Emma was napping peacefully, no sign of fever. Amy welcomed me wearing a dress I recognized from our marriage, her hair and makeup done. How's Emma? I asked, immediately suspicious. Better, she said. Her fever broke. She's just sleeping it off. I checked on Emma, who was indeed sleeping soundly, her forehead cool to the touch. When I returned to the living room, Amy had opened a bottle of wine, poured 2 glasses. I thought we could talk, she said, patting the couch beside her. About what I said yesterday. There's nothing to talk about, I said, remaining standing. I'm with Sarah. I'm happy. Are you really? She challenged. Or are you just afraid to try again with me? Afraid you might still have feelings for me? I'm not afraid, Amy. I'm done. What we had is over. I've moved on. You need to accept that. She stood up, moving closer. We share a child, Marcus. We'll always be connected. Why fight what's between us? Before I could react, she leaned in and kissed me. I pulled back immediately, stepping away from her. What are you doing? I demanded. This isn't okay. You felt something, she insisted. I know you did. The only thing I felt was discomfort, I said angrily. You need to stop this, Amy. Now. She looked like she was about to argue further when the front door opened. Sarah stood there, her expression a mixture of shock and hurt. She'd come anyway, worried about Emma, bringing children's Tylenol and a stuffed animal. Sarah, I said, moving toward her. This isn't what it looks like. It looks like your ex-wife kissed you, Sarah said, her voice flat. Yes, but I didn't want her to. I pulled away immediately. Amy watched this exchange, a strange smile playing on her lips. It was clear she'd orchestrated the whole thing. The fake fever, the wine, the kiss. She'd wanted Sarah to walk in, hoping it would drive a wedge between us. That's when I knew Amy hadn't changed at all. She was still manipulative, still willing to hurt others to get what she wanted. Even at the expense of Emma's well-being, using our daughter's health as a ploy. The next morning, I contacted my lawyer, requesting an emergency meeting. I explained the situation, Amy's manipulation, her attempts to use Emma to force a reconciliation. He listened carefully, making notes. We need to formalize everything, he said when I finished. Custody, visitation, support. Leave no gray areas she can exploit. I agreed. We spent 2 hours drafting a comprehensive co-parenting plan that spelled out every aspect of our arrangement. My lawyer assured me it was fair, generous even, but with clear boundaries to protect everyone involved. Then I called Amy, asking to meet at a neutral location, a coffee shop near her house. I brought the paperwork and a witness, my brother Mark, who had always seen through Amy's manipulations. She arrived looking hopeful, clearly thinking our meeting was about reconciliation. Her expression fell when she saw Mark. What's this about? She asked. I slid the co-parenting agreement across the table. This is a formal custody and visitation arrangement. It's generous, fair to both of us, and puts Emma's needs first. If you agree to it, we can avoid going back to court. She glanced at the papers, then back at me. Is this because of yesterday? Marcus, I'm sorry if I overstepped, but it's because of everything, I interrupted. The lies about Emma's paternity, keeping her from me for 8 months, faking a medical emergency to try to seduce me. using our daughter as a pawn in your games. It stops now, Amy. She flushed angrily. You're blowing this out of proportion. I made mistakes, yes, but... I held up a hand, cutting her off again. I don't want to hear it. I'm not interested in your justifications or excuses. What I want is a clear arrangement that protects Emma and establishes boundaries between us. You're doing this because of her, Amy said bitterly. That nurse. She's turned you against me. Mark snorted at that, but I kept my composure. No, Amy. You did that all on your own. Sarah has nothing to do with this decision. This is about Emma, about giving her stable, loving parents who respect each other even if they're not together. And if I don't sign, she challenged. Then we go to court, I said evenly. I have documentation of your recent behavior, the false medical emergency, your attempt to interfere with my relationship. Do you really want a judge to hear all that? She stared at me for a long moment, then dropped her eyes to the agreement. Something in her seemed to deflate, the fight going out of her. I just thought. She began, her voice small. I thought we could be a family again. We are a family, I said more gently. Just not the kind you're imagining. We're Emma's parents, and we always will be. But that's all we are to each other now. She read through the agreement slowly. It was fair, even generous, giving her primary physical custody with liberal visitation for me, provisions for holidays, birthdays, special occasions. I'd pay child support above the required amount, plus contribute to a college fund for Emma. All I asked was respect for boundaries and honest communication. After what seemed like an eternity, Amy picked up the pen and signed her name on each marked page. Mark witnessed the signatures. It was done. I have one more thing to tell you, I said as she prepared to leave. Sarah and I are getting married. Amy's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. But it's only been a year and a half since our divorce, I finished for her. I know. But when you find the right person, you know. The person who supports you, respects you, is honest with you. We're not rushing. We'll have a long engagement. I wanted you to hear it from me, not through gossip. She was silent for a moment, absorbing this. Then to my surprise, she nodded slowly. I hope she makes you happy, she said finally. You deserve that. It was the first genuine, selfless thing I'd heard from her since this whole ordeal began. Maybe, just maybe, she was capable of change after all. 3 months later, Emma celebrated her first birthday. Her health was much improved, though she'd need monitoring for years to come. Amy and I managed a civil celebration, both of us plus Sarah, my family, Amy's parents. No tension, no drama. Just people who cared about a little girl marking her first year of life. As I watched Emma smash cake into her mouth, I felt a profound sense of peace. The path to this moment had been unimaginably difficult, full of betrayal, pain, and heartbreak. But it had led me to my daughter, to Sarah, to a deeper understanding of myself and what I wanted from life. Sarah came to stand beside me, slipping her hand into mine. Our wedding was set for the spring, simple, intimate, with Emma as our flower girl. Amy had accepted the invitation, surprising us both. Worth it? Sarah asked, nodding toward Emma, who was now wearing more cake than she'd eaten. Every bit, I said, squeezing her hand. Even the hard parts. Amy caught my eye across the room, gave me a small smile. Not the manipulative one I'd come to dread, but something more genuine, more mature. We'd never be friends, but we'd found a way to be parents together, to put Emma first. Sometimes life's greatest gifts come disguised as its greatest trials. Emma, my beautiful daughter born of betrayal, had ultimately led me to healing, to Sarah, to the family I was meant to have. Not the one I'd planned, but the one I needed. Sometimes what leaves someone truly speechless isn't a grand gesture or cruel revenge, but simply moving forward with grace, dignity, and an open heart. Building a life so full of joy that the past loses its power to hurt you. That's what I'd done. And watching Amy's face as she witnessed the happiness she'd nearly destroyed, I knew she finally understood what she'd lost, not me, but the kind of love built on trust, respect, and honesty. The kind that endures.